I'm sober. Is anyone else sober? Cool. Right before I got sober, back in 2010, I got arrested once again on a simple possession charge in Philadelphia. Okay, you probably, what did you get arrested for? Okay, so I was on Broad Street and I was handing my friend a single xanax, and it was when 8 cops were walking by. So this was 10 years ago. So fast forward a year and a half. I just got a touring bike and I'm about to ride it across the country. I'd left for rehab a year and a half before, and I'm living in a halfway house, and in the morning I'm going to leave the halfway house for good to ride my bike across the country. So in the morning, I take off, I ride up the coast. My plan is to go up the coast to Maine, and then from Maine to Washington State, 6,500 miles. So I dumpster dive, I camp in people's lawns, and I feel a sense of autonomy that I've never felt before. I feel like this is what I needed to get back in touch with myself. So after some time, like I feel like the rush of riding is just better than any rush I've ever had. So I get to New England, steep graded hills and apple orchards, small town after small town, and I arrive in a town called Freedom in New Hampshire. Freedom is a very small town. You would miss it from the top of the hill and the state road that runs through it if you didn't know it was there. There's really no reason to stop in Freedom unless you live there or you know someone who lives there. And here I am. I've decided to stop in Freedom. I get to the bottom of the hill in Freedom, and I do what I do every night. I'm like, let me find a place to sleep. So I go around and knock on people's doors to see if I can find a lawn to camp in. Typically, when I would do this, I would look for welcoming signs. So I would look for like lawn gnomes or flowers, bright colors. So I find a house, and Freedom is a town where it's called Freedom. So there are these American flags hanging from every doorstep. It is it is called Freedom for a reason. So I find this house, and there's a kid's bike lying in the grass. There's a welcome sign on the door. There's like a bird's nest on some kind of tree in the lawn. So I'm like, this looks like a good spot. So I knock on the door, and a woman answers, and she's holding a baby, and I can hear a kid crying in the background. I'm like, okay, this person has their hands full. She says, yes. She's like, you can sleep in my backyard. So I'm like, yeah, I found a place to sleep for the night. So I get my tent set up, all my gear and everything. I start to settle in for the night. I'm kneeling down. I've unpacked only what I can. It's a pain to pack all this stuff back on a bike. And I hear a voice from over my shoulder. And I turn and I see the starched blue uniform. And it is the sheriff of Freedom. And my heart sinks. I'm like, oh, what's gonna happen? You know? So all the scenarios just start running through my head. You know, I'm newly sober. I'm like, what could become of this? So he comes up, he's like, what are you doing there? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, well, I'm camping in this person's lawn. You know, it's clear to me. And you know, he's like, I know what you're doing. Like, this is a small town, everyone knows each other. Like, she just called me to make sure you're okay and check you out. So can I see some ID? And so I give him my ID, he goes back to his car, and he looks me up in his system. And of course, I'm thinking, I'm going back to Philadelphia, you know, like, he's gonna find this charge, you know, this simple possession charge from Philadelphia, and I will soon be extradited in the back of a cop car. So he comes back, hands me my ID, and he's like, you're fine, you know, you're free to go. And maybe I did this as a reflex and wasn't wise to ask, but I was like, what happened? You know, like, didn't you look me up in your system? You know, and he's like, yeah, I did, but you're on a journey here, and I'm gonna let you go. So he let me go, and I stay there for the night. And I settle into my tent. I have a headlamp, and I hold my hands. I'm shakily reading a book, and I just feel really good knowing that I've just averted disaster. A moment later, I hear a tapping on the tent fly, and it's the woman from the house, and she has a bowl of hot soup or something. She's like, "Would you like some borscht?" And I'm like, yeah, sure, but what is borscht? And she says it's a hot Polish soup. And I say, yeah, great. So I take it, and it was really good. And if you have never tried borscht, I recommend it. It's very nourishing after a long day.